Hello, my name is Matthew Travis, and I am founder and president of Aphelion Aerospace. We are a dedicated nanosatellite launch services provider, and today I would like to talk a little bit about the nanolaunch market, its history, its future trends, and what we are doing to address that market and serve it to our maximum ability. First, what is a nanosatellite? A nanosatellite is generally a satellite that weighs 1 kilogram or less, although in the market we do serve up to 100 kilograms. These are spacecraft that are built from what are called units. Each unit is a 10 centimeter cube, and these can be combined into different configurations and sizes. The CubeSat nanosatellite market had its beginning early this century with the invention in academia of the CubeSat standard platform. The miniaturization of technology and advances with software, chip, and sensor designs has enabled increasing capabilities in ever smaller packages. This has resulted over the past 20 years of a greater and greater adoption of the CubeSat platform. Everybody from universities all the way up to NASA and DoD are leveraging this capability more and more every year. And in fact, the total addressable market right now for nanosatellite launch is around it's around $11 billion in 2020. That it does include some larger spacecraft actually, but it's about $11 billion. That launch market is projected to grow to $49 billion by 2030. The CubeSat hardware market, the actual spacecraft, has a total addressable market today of roughly $220 million, and that is projected to grow to $1.34 billion in 2030. So as you can see, the market is undergoing an exponential growth. It has been growing like this for the past 10 years or so, and it is anticipated to continue this growth trend. And by the year 2030, it is forecast that up to 2,000 or more nanosatellites will be launched annually. So there's a huge market out there that we can tap into. We are one of a number of companies addressing this market, and we do believe that the demand side of the equation will support our entry into the market and our ability to serve that market with many launches and responsive launch throughout the year annually. So what are the drivers of this market growth, and is it sustainable? As I mentioned, advances in technology are enabling very complex missions in ever smaller spacecraft. So one of the primary drivers is economic. There are a lot of companies out there who have plans or are deploying constellations of nanosatellites. These are serving everything from cellular services in remote areas to Internet of Things, Earth imaging like Planet and their Earth imaging spacecraft. And to deploy large constellations of spacecraft, it's a lot more economic if you can deploy small spacecraft. So really the fundamental driver has been that advances in technology have enabled these complex missions at much lower cost. And with the lower cost, that enables even more missions to be deployed. And that's what's driven this upward curve line in the growth of the market. So then the question is this growth sustainable? Some investors out there may remember in the late 1990s, there was talk about, large constellations being deployed in Earth orbit for satellite phones and direct-to-home TV, Iridium and Globalstar, et cetera. And that market went bust. It imploded in the early 2000s. And a number of companies did go out of business because of it. So there is an understandable concern for the sustainability, but again, the technology advances that we've seen over the past 20 years, we're not talking about deploying constellations of multi-ton, billion-dollar satellites. A single CubeSat may cost only a couple $100,000, maybe $1 million. A company might be deploying hundreds of these. So the risk per unit, financial risk, is much lower than it has been in the past. So, looking at, for an example, the Department of Defense, they have a zero failure tolerance for their satellites and for their satellite launch. And that's because one intelligence gathering satellite can cost $2 billion and it can cost $300 million to get to orbit. That's a tremendous financial risk if there's a failure. By deploying smaller satellites, that risk is spread out, and the overall system, the overall constellation, is much more robust. So a combination of economics and technology enabling this growth, we don't really see there being a negative opportunity for this growth to be reversed. When we look at even during the COVID-19 pandemic last year, the launch industry and the space industry continued to grow, and investment continued to flow into aerospace companies, even while economies around the world were being shut down. So it is a very robust market. Many of these systems that are getting deployed into space are critical to a particular customer's business model, critical to government needs, whether it be NASA or DoD. So the fact that these are, it really is critical infrastructure. That's how we look at it. It's like even in a recession, roads still have to get repaired. Even in down economic times, these spacecraft still have to get deployed and operate. So when we shift from looking at a satellite deployment as being something optional or nice to do, or it might be a good add-on to a business, really what we're looking at is critical infrastructure. And that right there makes it much more robust to economic conditions. So we really don't see the market imploding like it did in the 1990s. Will the growth rate continue to accelerate? Over time, it may slow down, but the market is still going to be tremendously large. And when thousands of satellites are being launched per year, that's a pretty big pie for the players in the industry to serve. So we do feel like we're in a good place for future growth. Large constellations being deployed in Earth orbit for satellite phones and direct-to-home TV, Iridium and Globalstar, et cetera. And that market went bust. It imploded in the early 2000s. And a number of companies did go out of business because of it. So there is an understandable concern for the sustainability, but again, the technology advances that we've seen over the past 20 years, we're not talking about deploying constellations of multi-ton, billion-dollar satellites. A single CubeSat may cost only a couple $100,000, maybe $1 million. A company might be deploying hundreds of these. So the risk per unit financial risk is much lower than it has been in the past. So, looking at for an example, the Department of Defense, they have a zero failure tolerance for their satellites and for their satellite launch, and that's because one intelligence gathering satellite can cost $2 billion, and it can cost $300 million to get to orbit. That's a tremendous financial risk if there's a failure. By deploying smaller satellites, that risk is spread out, and the overall system, the overall constellation, is much more robust. So a combination of economics and technology enabling this growth, we don't really see there being a negative opportunity for this growth to be reversed. When we look at even during the COVID-19 pandemic last year, the launch industry and the space industry continued to grow. As I mentioned, the nano launch market is a rapidly growing market, and it is forecast to continue growing through the foreseeable future. The industry is experiencing approximately a 16% CAGR year over year through 2030, growing from an annual launch market revenue of $11 billion up to 50, and potentially even more. We do plan on obtaining U.S. government launch contracts with NASA, DoD, and others. We are also engaging the commercial side of the industry, so private companies deploying communications and Earth imaging and other types of spacecraft constellations. And then we're not forgetting about the academic side of the market, where CubeSats actually got their origin. So those are our three target markets, and each one, we address somewhat differently. The government has their ways of procurement and winning contracts. So the commercial sector has their sales processes, so does academia. But we are approaching all three, and we want to serve as diverse range of customers as we can. Getting to that point requires a lot of R&D and significant amount of capital. So as our early entry into the market, we will also license and sell the hardware and software systems that we are developing during the course of developing the launch system. So that would be our spacecraft hardware, which will be ready for market within approximately 6 months from now. Our propulsion technology, we are willing to license that out to other companies, as long as they don't compete with us. So, and software licensing and other opportunities to generate revenue early. So that's where we look at our MVP, our most valuable product. So that'll get us our revenue early and support continued development and deployment of the launch service. So it's a very exciting time. It's a golden age of the launch industry. We see both billionaires and teenagers going to space these days, as well as senior citizens. Congratulations to Wally Funk finally flying. So it's a really exciting time. If you are interested in learning more about the nano launch industry, Aphelion Aerospace, or our current and future plans, please feel free to reach out to us either by visiting our website, aphelionaerospace.com, and contacting us there, or you may email us directly at info@aphelionaerospace.com. Thank you.